I'm Denise Callahan, the Director of Strategic Planning and the Project Management Office for the Doe Run Company. We've had an interesting journey since the PMO was formed in 2006. I'd like to share some of our lessons learned with you. First, here is some background information on Doe Run, my company in the United States. The Doe Run Company is a privately held, innovative natural resource company dedicated to responsible mining and metal production. Doe Run manages the life cycle of lead in our mining, milling, metal production, and recycling operations. We have 6 mines and 4 mills that produce approximately 5 million tons of ore annually in the southeast Missouri region. We primarily produce lead, copper, and zinc. Doe Run also operates one of the Western Hemisphere's largest single-site lead recycling facilities, where we recycle automotive as well as stationary batteries. We also provide metal fabrication through our fabricated products subsidiary in Arizona and Washington State. Our exploration, research, and development operations are active in North America and other parts of the world. Lead mining in Missouri began in the 1720s, and Doe Run's predecessor, the St. Joseph Lead Company, was formed in 1864. While we don't use burros to haul ore any longer, in general, the mining and metals industry is slow to adopt new technologies and new ways of doing things. For a company that's been in business for over 150 years, organizational change is difficult. To give you an idea where Doe Run is physically located, our company headquarters are in St. Louis, Missouri. All of our operations are located in the United States, with almost all operations in Missouri, which is centrally located in the Midwest section of the country. We also have facilities in Arizona to produce fabricated products, and in Washington to produce lead oxide, which is used in car batteries. Here's a timeline to give you a sense of what we've done over the past 12 years. We've really focused in 3 areas. We started with improving our project management capabilities through processes, people, and tools. Soon after that, we began implementing portfolio management processes, as it doesn't matter how well you execute a project if you're working on the wrong project. Then, in 2013, the PMO was asked to facilitate the development and coordination of strategic planning and execution enterprise-wide, as an extension of what we had done with project and portfolio management. So in the next few slides, I'm going to provide more information on the mandate and organization for our PMO. Then I'd like to focus on 3 objectives: the right projects, managed right, supporting the right strategy. For each area, I'm going to describe where we started, where we wanted to be, and what we did to get there. Prior to 2006, the Doe Run Company had no formal project portfolio or project management in place. While project performance was not routinely tracked, there are examples of projects being completed at 100% to 200% over schedule and budget. There was no formal training in project management processes for Doe Run personnel. Most projects were managed by external project managers with little Doe Run oversight. After years of projects being delivered significantly over schedule and over budget, and not delivering agreed upon business objectives, ownership lost confidence in Doe Run's project planning and delivery capabilities. As a result, every project estimated to cost over $10,000 US required pre-approval from our board of directors in New York. An average length of time for project funding approval of 98 days resulted in delays to projects that were key to improving business results. Also in 2006, the company struggled with a large enterprise resource planning system implementation, which was led by a functional manager with no project management experience. As a result of poor project planning, lack of proper estimates up front, and multiple scope changes, the project completed 100% over budget and a year late. Frustration drove company executives to look for ways to improve project management. On the recommendation of an executive team member, I was hired in the position of PMO manager, and the enterprise-wide project management office was created in 2006. Even though the executives wanted to try something different, they just weren't convinced that a PMO was the right answer. As a result, I was brought in as a temporary consultant, and the PMO was given 1 year to show progress toward delivering projects as promised. My first visit from the Chief Operating Officer started with him telling me not to let my bureaucracy get in the way of getting things done. Since I was new to Doe Run, and I was still learning about company processes and the mining business, a team of people from throughout Doe Run were selected to assist me with establishing the governance model and initial processes for the PMO. The executive team recommended people from multiple divisions and departments throughout Doe Run. They selected people who had the ability to influence others, either through a position of authority, for example, a division general manager, or through informal authority, for example, a well-respected engineer with many years of seniority. The team also included a mix of long-term and new employees, so the newer employees could bring different perspectives from companies they had worked for other than Doe Run. People were willing to participate because they were asked by the executive team and because they knew the situation needed improvement. We also treated the implementation of the PMO just like any other well-managed project. We created a charter describing our mission, vision, and objectives, and determined the resources needed and a strategy for implementation. So in addition to the mandate to not slow progress down with bureaucracy, the initial mandate for the PMO, which still exists today, was no surprises through better planning, setting realistic expectations, and improving the quality of information on projects. We wanted to meet not only project metrics, but more importantly, the business objectives of the project. In many cases, inadequate planning was done before the project execution phase started. Front-loading that planning would allow us to make changes early when they could have a significant positive impact, and those changes could be made at a lower cost. For example, changing a building layout during the initial design phase only requires additional engineering time. But changing that building layout during the execution phase could also require tearing down walls and ordering different materials. And the long-term objective was the ability to manage projects with less scrutiny from the board of directors. We set up a PMO structure that fit the Doe Run organization. Because Doe Run operates in divisions, the PMO was established as a center of excellence with a decentralized structure. Engineers in each division serve as project managers, but do not report directly to the PMO. In many cases, external project managers are hired. However, in this case, a Doe Run project manager is appointed to provide oversight to the external project manager, and the Doe Run project manager is provided training by the PMO on how to effectively manage those external project managers. The PMO also provides guidance to part-time project managers, those with full-time jobs doing something other than project management. Even though the PMO reports through the CIO, it is responsible for projects enterprise-wide. The PMO operates with only 2 employees dedicated to project and portfolio management, myself as director, and a project portfolio coordinator. We've also recently added an employee to focus on data analytics, but more about that later. Doe Run executes about 200 projects of significant size every year, with approximately 40 of those in development at any given time. Typical types of projects include engineering, construction, IT, and corporate projects, and range in cost from $10,000 US to $150 million US. While there is no formal relationship between the PMO and operational management, the groups work closely together. The PMO strives to understand each operations business and issues to better understand their proposed projects. PMO personnel sit side by side with operations staff to help develop business cases for projects, to provide advice on estimation techniques, and to assess lessons learned at the end of a project. We work with them at their location rather than at corporate, and we wear casual clothes instead of the more formal wear required at headquarters. We never talk about enforcing policy, but instead provide examples of how following recommended practices has helped others in similar situations. This helps the operations staff understand that the PMO is here to help, rather than being seen as a distant unit in a corporate office only formed to enforce policy. In order to meet the mandate of no surprises, the PMO adopted the following mission. We wanted an environment where project success is the norm, project teams are proud of their work, internal customers reap the benefit of a carefully planned investment, and external customers win through improved service or lower cost. Soon after we assumed responsibility for project management best practices, we also introduced portfolio management processes. Our theme became the right projects done right. Over the years, responsibilities of the PMO evolved beyond just project and portfolio management to also include setting the strategy for the entire organization. I'll speak about all three areas today: what it looked like when we started out, our vision of where we eventually wanted to be, and what we had to do to get there. I'll finish up with a look at how we gauge our performance and maturity. The first area I'll cover is project management. When we started out, it kind of felt like each project manager existed in their own castle within their own fiefdom. Some of the project managers might have used some project management practices, but they certainly didn't share those practices with others, and there were no organization-wide standards in place. We wanted common standards that were easy to use and flexible based on project complexity. We wanted a planning process that was front-loaded, and we wanted projects to have clear scope and requirements. We wanted to have standard project phases with appropriate stage gates between those phases, so decisions on whether or not to move forward on a project could be made long before money was spent on execution. So the first thing we did was to purchase a project management methodology for the metals and mining industry and customized it to fit our company culture. The methodology was flexible in that the requirements for documentation and planning varied based on the complexity of the project. While the theory behind the methodology was solid, project managers often got lost in its sheer volume, as it was a set of guidelines, forms, and templates that was over 2,000 printed pages. Another limitation of a paper-based methodology was the time required for status reporting. Preparing a status report for a project was a cumbersome and non-value-added process of combining information from various Microsoft Word and Excel templates within the formal methodology. It didn't take long to discover that the project managers needed training on the new methodology and on project management. So we developed and offered training in topics that included project management overview, scheduling, scoping and requirements, risk management, building business cases, cost management, and leading organizational change. We also created a list of 10 best practices regarding project management, such as review your risk register at least monthly, and we incorporated demonstrated use of those best practices into individual project manager performance and reward systems. While training helped with the use of best practices, we still didn't have the adoption that we wanted, especially on small to medium-sized projects that didn't get as much attention. So in 2013, we rolled out SharePoint project sites as a way to simplify methodology use. Each project had a site built on a standard template that summarized key information used to manage the project on one page. For example, items can be added to a risk register as a SharePoint list and actively updated during the project. Also, project schedules developed in Microsoft Project can be synchronized with SharePoint task lists to display key schedule data on the project site. Project sponsors view project status information via the homepage of the SharePoint project site. The information is up to date at any point in time, so the project manager no longer has to spend time compiling a status report from multiple sources, and the project sponsor can get updates at any time by going to the project site. While project managers of larger and more complex projects still use templates out of the formal methodology, project managers of small to medium-sized efforts can provide just enough project management through these SharePoint project sites. We initially focused training on project managers only. Eventually, we realized that we needed to expand training to team members, functional managers, project sponsors, and executives so that each group understood their role in making a project successful. It was especially important that the project sponsors have a clear idea of what they should expect out of a project manager and how to hold the project manager accountable. At that time, project status reports and presentations focused on reporting recent activity, for example, showing pictures of construction projects. While pictures can be very interesting, the project sponsors had no objective measures of project progress. In regards to project sponsorship, we wanted to be in a position where sponsors are clear on their role in project success at each phase of the project, sponsors are actively involved in the projects, and sponsors ask the right questions to confirm that the project is on track for schedule, scope, and cost, that risks are being evaluated and issues are being addressed, and that the project is on track to meet business objectives. We also wanted sponsors to have the reporting tools they needed to gauge true project status. One of our first steps was to customize training for project sponsors so that, in a limited time frame, we could help them get comfortable with holding project managers responsible for project delivery. The PMO provides guidelines on what a project sponsor should expect from a project manager, and key questions to ask about the projects are provided to project sponsors. This training helps project sponsors become comfortable with their role in projects. Another step we took was to hold annual project briefing meetings to discuss projects planned for the upcoming fiscal year. For each project, we bring together the project manager, project sponsor, and project owner into a room to set expectations up front for how the project will be managed. For example, the project managers and project sponsors agree on the frequency of status reporting and the criteria for escalating scope changes or issues to the project sponsor. The project sponsor also ranks priorities for each project in terms of scope, quality, time, and cost. For each project, it is determined what groups need to be involved and the key roles and responsibilities needed on each project team. These project briefing meetings ensure expectations of all parties are in alignment as a project is initiated. Finally, we established standard reporting. For example, we provided an integrated method for tracking project cost in the company financial system rather than on independent spreadsheets, leading to higher productivity and more accurate project reporting. So now that we'd made progress on training individual project managers and sponsors on best practices, we tackled our next problem. Project managers still operated independently, not sharing any lessons learned, even on something as simple as a good or bad experience with a particular vendor. There was also no evaluation of project results. As I mentioned before, there was a sense that projects were running 100 to 200% over schedule and budget, but those items weren't tracked. Once a project manager finished a project, he or she left the project owner to deal with any operational issues and moved on to the latest project. In terms of knowledge management, we wanted the following. We wanted lessons learned documented in a central repository and used to improve both future project results as well as PMO processes. Sharing of project management knowledge and metrics that measured both project performance and the achievement of business objectives. To encourage the sharing of knowledge, we began assessing project results and benefits for all completed projects. We also asked the project managers to capture lessons learned into a common location. Specific goals for each project are to be within 10% of the baseline schedule, to be within 5% of the approved project amount, to have actual net present value be at least 90% of target net present value, and to have at least 90% of stated business objectives achieved. The PMO now conducts post-implementation audits on all projects to evaluate these items as well as stakeholder satisfaction. We communicate project results back to project sponsors and key stakeholders. We also use lessons learned as a feedback loop to fine-tune our PMO processes and training programs. Also, as part of the kickoff meeting for any new project, there is a review of pertinent lessons learned from prior projects and a discussion on how to apply the lessons learned to improve results on the current project. In addition, we capture information on the performance of external service providers used on the project. For each external service provider, data is collected on the scope of work, the type of contract, what the provider did well, what the provider could have done better, recommendations on future engagements. For example, we ask, would you use this provider again, and if so, in what capacity? This information is made available to other project teams who may be looking for similar resource providers. All lessons learned data is posted to a common portal along with PMO templates and reference materials. To help the exchange of project management knowledge, a community of practice was formed in 2012 with project managers from across different divisions and departments within Doe Run. This community of practice meets once a month. During the meetings, we review project status and discuss lessons learned. There is also time spent each month getting input on best practices and discussing how following those best practices can lead to improved performance. The meeting gives the project managers an opportunity to learn from each other, to share war stories, and has played a major role in reducing resistance to implementing project management best practices. When we initially evaluated how to improve project management performance, we chose to focus on standard processes, and we implemented tools such as SharePoint project sites and the Microsoft project. However, it doesn't matter how good the process or tools are if you don't have the right people. When we first formed the PMO, each division was responsible for recruiting and hiring its own project managers without any involvement from the PMO. Unfortunately, the primary criteria for being assigned to a project was available time. Regardless of whether or not the project manager had adequate expertise or any experience with the type or complexity of the particular project. We called these accidental project managers. In regards to project management talent, we wanted to have an adequate number of project managers to manage the chosen project portfolio, project managers that were assigned to a project based on their expertise and the complexity of the project, and recruiting practices and succession planning to provide a pipeline of project managers both now and in the future. The first thing we did to improve our project management talent was to only assign project managers that were capable of managing a specified project. At the initiation of every project, the project sponsor coordinates with the PMO on possible project managers. Each project is assigned a score that evaluates project complexity based on a high-level estimate of cost, time, technology impact, execution environment, and production dependencies. Each project is assigned a project category of A, B, C, or D, with A's being the most costly and complex projects and Category D projects being routine, smaller projects. The project manager's experience level is then assessed to determine how many of each category of project he or she had managed in the past and whether or not they've been successful. If a project manager has not delivered a project of similar complexity in the past, either another project manager will be assigned or mentors will be identified to assist the project manager progress to the next level. So in addition to trying to eliminate those accidental project managers, we also annually assess project manager needs in the short and long term and assist divisions with business case justification for hiring additional project managers. We also got the divisions to agree to cross-functional transfers of project managers where it made sense. This was a major accomplishment for a company still dealing with those individual fiefdoms. We recommended mentoring models and succession plans. The PMO became involved in project manager recruiting and selection. And we introduced the use of a project support person to manage cost and schedule on larger projects. Soon after the PMO took on responsibility for improving project management practices, we also made recommendations on a process for assessing, prioritizing, and selecting projects for the portfolio. In our minds, what good was it to execute a project well if you were doing the wrong projects? Prior to 2007, each division was allocated capital funding based on historical financial allocation by division, regardless of the current business situation. Business cases for individual projects were based on a one-paragraph description of project scope, with no quantification of the impact on the project on operations. There was no executive oversight, and management lacked visibility into our strategic investment portfolio. Every year, millions of dollars would be invested without a consistent method to track return on investment. In regards to portfolio management, we wanted to be in a situation where funds were put to the best use company-wide, there was adequate information about projects to make good business decisions, the project selection process resulted in a portfolio of projects with the greatest positive return, there's a healthy project pipeline to meet the company's short, mid, and long-term objectives, and where the project portfolio could change quickly with business conditions. The PMO introduced a new portfolio management process to allocate funding by project rather than by functional area. Projects are prioritized after an annual meeting to present business cases for projects to be included in the upcoming budget year. The PMO established requirements for the information to be presented for each business case. Information for each project is provided on scope, cost and benefits, risk, financial, environmental, and social impact, resource needs and availability, organizational change impact, and reward. Also, when necessary, projects are grouped into programs of projects depending on shared objectives or resource coordination. Then projects are categorized to help in the selection process. For example, projects are divided into categories of non-discretionary spending, things that we have to do for things such as safety, regulatory, and sustaining maintenance, and into a category of discretionary spending for things such as profit improvement, strategic objectives, and cost reduction. All proposed projects for the budget cycle are placed on a risk-reward bubble chart so they can be compared as part of the project selection and ranking process. In the Excel chart, complexity is shown on the x-axis and internal rate of return is shown on the y-axis. The size of the bubble indicates the total cost of the project. The color of the bubble indicates the type of the project. The most desirable projects are high and to the left on the chart. High potential reward with low complexity. The least desirable projects are low on the chart and to the right. Low potential reward with high complexity. Just as with the financial portfolio, The objective is to provide a desired level of reward and risk. After each business case is presented at the annual meeting, company executives and senior leaders score projects based on 6 variables: timing, strategy alignment, their confidence in the business case assumptions, the ability to deliver the project, revenue impact, and project risk. Projects also receive an overall score of must have, should have, nice to have, or not now. Projects are ranked in order, and projects are included in the budget based on anticipated funding availability. The Doe Run portfolio of projects is managed by the PMO. Planned projects for the next 5 years are maintained in a Microsoft project schedule, which the PMO uses to help determine optimal timing of projects based on project interdependencies, funding availability, and resource availability. Priorities are reviewed on a monthly basis, and projects are reprioritized if changing business conditions dictate. There were 2 initial problems with the new portfolio management process. First, people were uncomfortable with the new process. They were used to having the freedom to decide how to spend the allocated funds for their division without any corporate oversight. Also, it took several years to develop skills in building good business cases. However, after several years with the new process, it was clear that limited funds were distributed where they had the greatest positive impact on the company as a whole. So we had solid portfolio management processes in place, but we still struggled with the paper-based project funding approval process. These funding requests required multiple signatures from multiple physical locations. Paperwork was lost, there was confusion over the current version of the funding request, and an inability to quickly determine where a project was at in the funding process. Tracking of the project portfolio was done manually with Excel, which required a lot of work and did not provide the transparency needed to the status of projects in the portfolio. In regards to a portfolio management system, we wanted to have a process where we had the ability to capture all of the data related to a project in an automated system, automated workflow for approvals, data available to support PMO analyses, for example, the average turnaround time for approval of an environmental project request, and visibility into the status of critical initiatives. In 2013, Doe Run implemented an automated, centralized demand management project intake system. This system integrated project funding, project management, and project portfolio management. The system was built using SharePoint to automate project funding approvals and provide a consolidated dashboard of projects with project status and the ability to drill down to project details. When a project team first initiates a project, basic information is entered into a form in SharePoint. At that time, the system automatically creates a standard project site within SharePoint that serves as a centralized repository for all project-related documentation and supports team collaboration. Forms on the site are used to capture additional project information, including a detailed business case. When the team is ready to submit the project for funding, the approval process is automated using SharePoint, Microsoft Outlook, and a third-party workflow tool. Now that the PMO had best practices in place for project and portfolio management, we were asked to address a major issue for Doe Run: refreshing the enterprise strategy and ensuring that we had the right tactics in place and the right portfolio of projects in support of that strategy. Prior to 2013, Doe Run had a stated mission that was making tomorrow better than today. However, at the annual long-term strategic planning meeting, most of the discussion covered planned tactics that would continue providing business as usual. By this time, company executives had noticed positive results on project and portfolio management and had already asked the PMO to play a critical role in facilitating efforts such as risk assessments on new business models and value assessments for new technologies. Recognizing the important link between strategies, tactics, and projects, in 2013, the CEO asked the PMO to assume responsibility for strategic planning. The CEO who asked the PMO to assume responsibility for strategic planning was the same guy who, as the Chief Operating Officer in 2006, warned me not to let my bureaucracy get in the way of getting things done. Doe Run had come a long way in 7 years. Our goals for strategic planning and execution were the following. We wanted to have up-to-date strategies and goals for Doe Run that reflected the arenas we would participate in and described how we would achieve competitive advantage. We wanted a handful of key strategic metrics in place to gauge progress, with those metrics reviewed at least quarterly. Tactical plans needed to be in place and aligned to the strategy, and every project was to align with business goals. The first task for the PMO was to facilitate development of a company mission, why we exist, our values, core beliefs, and a vision for what the year 2030 might look like. Then we established goals and strategies in support of that vision. The PMO then led the effort to communicate this information to all employees in a way that was relevant to their job. The PMO now facilitates the annual process for reviewing the strategic plan, updating the mission, vision, values, goals, and strategies as appropriate. The PMO is also responsible for reporting quarterly on progress toward meeting strategic metrics. This information is then cascaded annually from the executive level to senior leadership. With the help of the PMO, senior leaders in each department and division use the strategy and goals to develop tactical objectives for their business unit. Once tactical plans are in place, the PMO works with each division and department to evaluate the operational activities, organizational changes, and projects required to support the tactical goals. The PMO drives cross-functional collaboration on planning for tactics, making sure that each tactic is assigned to an owner, that it has clear deliverables and metrics, and that there is an understanding of all the resources needed to accomplish the tactic. Each department and division explains the link to business strategy as part of every project proposal. Ideas for projects come from the top down as projects are identified that are needed in support of the strategy and long-term vision. Also, ideas for projects come from the bottom up, from employees on the front line that are looking to improve the business. In order to support this bottom-up generation of ideas, a third person was added to the PMO in 2015 with a focus on lean manufacturing and continuous improvement. In order to support digital transformation, that person also leads company efforts in data analytics and the Internet of Things. Data analytics is part of a larger process improvement picture. The first step in process improvement in any situation is to ensure that good, standardized processes are in place. Lean techniques can be used to address issues with basic processes. Once basic processes are in place, there may be a need to optimize those processes. That is where data analytics can be used to reveal what is going on and what needs to be done. Only at that point should projects be proposed. Looking at problems and opportunities in this way avoids a common problem of skipping the analysis and going directly to a project solution, which may or may not be right. For example, one of the Doe Run strategies is to increase metal production. The tactic is to increase production of zinc by 1% this year. The first line of attack is to ensure personnel are following standard operating procedures. If so, then analytics can be used to determine other options for improving metal production. In this example, analytics revealed that an increase in capacity is needed, so a project is initiated to install additional equipment. For most of the history of the PMO, responsibilities such as portfolio management have focused on capital spending. In supporting the drive for digital transformation, the PMO now leads the Center of Excellence for Data Analytics. In some cases, analytics were not possible due to a lack of data collection. So now the PMO is also responsible for the Internet of Things and determining where sensors will exist to automatically collect data needed for trending and analysis. For example, we now have sensors on much of our underground equipment to monitor engine temperature, speed, etc. So how does a PMO know if they're doing a good job or not? Well, I guess one of the indicators is that Doe Run PMO keeps getting asked to assume more and more responsibilities, not just project and portfolio management, but now strategic planning and execution, as well as driving digital transformation through data analytics and the Internet of Things. Even though we are a very small PMO, there's an appreciation of our approach to process development, and the organization comes to the PMO when there are new ideas to be developed and implemented. Some of the other areas that we look at to determine if the PMO is meeting its mandate and vision are Doe Run's projects more successful over time? Is there evidence that Doe Run is taking a more professional approach toward management of projects? Are the attitudes of Doe Run's staff regarding project work improving? Are the products of Doe Run's projects meeting their business objectives? And is Doe Run progressing along the project management maturity scale? We start our evaluation of PMO success with specific measures of project performance in regards to meeting project schedule, budget, business objectives, and net present value targets. In 2017, our targets were 70% of projects no more than 10% over schedule, at least 85% of projects no more than 5% over the approved amount, at least 92% of projects meeting at least 90% of business objectives, and 85% of projects with an actual net present value at least 90% of the target net present value. Many more projects are being completed on time and on budget than in the past. Improved planning is eliminating the rework that resulted in many projects being over budget and over schedule. A baseline measuring the impact of the PMO on project results was taken at the end of 2007 after new processes had been in place for 1 year. By the end of 2017, the percent of projects meeting schedule objectives increased from the 2007 baseline of 25% to 72%, and the percent of projects meeting cost objectives increased from 57% to 93%. Between 2007 and 2017, the percent of projects achieving stated business objectives dramatically increased from 57% to 88%, with 83% meeting net present value targets. While our performance on these metrics has improved significantly since the formation of the PMO, there is still room for improvement, particularly in schedule performance. Overall, however, the focus on meeting business objectives, including net present value, has really helped keep a focus on maintaining a clearly defined scope and requirements throughout the project. For example, all business objectives are defined as specific key performance indicators as part of the initial business case for a project. Each KPI is assigned to one individual as the primary person to ensure delivery, and progress toward delivering those KPIs is tracked throughout the project and is captured at the project end during lessons learned. Beyond gathering feedback on PMO value via project delivery results, we also gather information on performance via customer satisfaction surveys and anecdotes of changes to the organizational culture. For example, an annual survey is issued to executives and senior management on their view of project performance. In response to the question on the 2012 survey, "Are projects delivered as promised?" 88% of survey respondents replied with agree or strongly agree. This is in contrast to the 2009 survey, where only 63% replied with agree or strongly agree. It is difficult to assign a dollar figure to the impact of the PMO on Doe Run, but much anecdotal evidence shows a positive impact on the company. For example, projects are ranked in priority order, and priorities are reevaluated monthly. Having this process in place has allowed Doe Run to move quickly to address changing economic conditions. In the recession of 2009, having reliable information available on cash flow and business benefits made it much easier to determine which projects to suspend until the economy approved. The stage gate process supports evaluating the feasibility of projects early on before significant expenditures are made. For example, Doe Run canceled a planned plant expansion after the pre-feasibility stage when it was shown that the project would not yield the desired financial return. The Doe Run portfolio management process has encouraged managers to break down organizational silos and to support what is best for the company as a whole. For example, during project proposal meetings, now a general manager of one division may be seen arguing for funding for another division. Organizational indicators that the new practices have been accepted and welcomed as part of the Doe Run culture include a Doe Run division manager reminding his employees, "We used to do planning on the back of a napkin. Now we research alternatives and provide fully thought out plans with detailed cost analyses," and team members reminding each other that project and portfolio management processes are just the way we do things, and then holding each other accountable to those practices. Reviewing the project portfolio has ensured better alignment with company strategy, encouraged involvement of key stakeholders, eliminated company silos, increased employee buy-in for new initiatives, and improved communication. The PMO's leadership in digital transformation through data analytics has also had a major positive impact on Doe Run. Here are 3 examples of how Doe Run has used data from analytics to increase revenue and decrease operating cost. First, we used analytics to identify best practices for road maintenance in our underground mines, saving a lot of money on tires. Second, we provided our sales department with data for decision making on freight carriers. And third, we used analytics to determine the best product mix for our recycling facility. Hard dollar savings from the first full year of the analytics program were calculated at over $5 million US, a significant impact for a company with $500 million in revenue. Perhaps the clearest indicator of the impact of the PMO is the following. When the PMO was organized in 2006, the major pain point identified with projects was the delay in obtaining project funding. Through the work of the PMO, confidence in the ability of Doe Run personnel to successfully deliver projects has increased to a level where the board of directors raised the dollar limit for requiring board approval from $10,000 US to $500,000. Also, the average time for project funding approval has dropped from 98 days to an average of 22 days. So now critical projects can be completed in time to meet operational needs. Our other claim to fame? In 2010, we wanted to benchmark our progress against other PMOs and applied for the PMO of the Year award, at that time sponsored by PM Solutions and the PMO Special Interest Group of PMI. We were runner-up to IBM for PMO of the Year. We were especially proud of the recognition of the impact that a small, decentralized PMO can have on company success. The PMO reviews our current level of project management maturity annually. We evaluate our maturity using the project management maturity model developed by PM Solutions. In 2006, prior to the PMO, any processes used were ad hoc, putting us at level 1, initial process. By 2010, project management maturity had moved from level 1 to level 2, structured process and standards. We had basic standard project management practices in place. However, they were only consistently used on the largest and most complex projects. Since 2010, functions have moved into level 3, organizational standards and institutionalized process, where processes are standard and repeatable for all projects. In some areas, processes have moved into level 4. For example, processes are integrated with corporate processes, and there are solid analyses of project performance. Also, management is now using data to make decisions. However, we have not completely moved into Level 4, as management does not always mandate compliance to standards. Over the next 12 months, the focus for the Doe Run Enterprise PMO will be to continue to push for mandated compliance to best practices for every project at Doe Run. We will do this by refresher training on project sponsorship at our annual project briefing meetings, as well as to continue to publish project closing reports that include project and business results as well as lessons learned. It is also critical that Doe Run continue to have a pipeline of project managers with solid expertise and skills. Mining is a very cyclical industry, and our mines are located in remote areas, so it can be difficult to keep the number of skilled project managers necessary to support succession planning or an influx of larger projects. Work on improving recruiting, development, and retention should help in this area. As mentioned earlier, the PMO has expanded to assume responsibility as a center of excellence for data analytics. We will continue to mature our systems, tools, and skills to provide the data necessary to drive strategic decisions. Most importantly, we want to shift the PMO focus from simply governing and delivering projects to strategically supporting digital transformation. Our methodology already provides a framework to support this, and we can now emphasize techniques that will help, including opportunity framing sessions to support ideation and help teams find new ways to solve problems, frequent stage gates to decide whether a project should continue or not, and an expanded emphasis on more frequent reviews by stakeholders to provide feedback on project value. Focus on maturing these individual items should lead to an overall increased maturity of the PMO and the organization. I appreciate the opportunity for the Enterprise PMO of the Doe Run Company to represent the United States at the 2018 PMO Global Awards. Thank you for your time.